So this session will be recorded and we will share it with everyone in an email after in the next few days, and it'll also live on our website, and we'll be sure to share the link with everyone. So A Good Place Therapy, we are a bi-coastal private practice. We offer therapy for adults, couples, children, teens, families. We have offices in downtown Manhattan, in the Tribeca area, in San Francisco, and recently we just opened an office in Palo Alto. We what we do is we use evidence-based practice modalities. We have a staff of over 25 therapists now in all locations, and we treat issues ranging from anxiety, grief, loss, depression, reproductive, maternal mental health, interpersonal conflict, trauma recovery, eating disorders and body image, and we also focus on premarital and couples counseling as well. We were seeing most of our clients virtually, but now, thank God that the pandemic has sort of dwindled. We are seeing a lot of clients in person, which is really exciting for us. We do continue to take in-person safety measures. So if it's ever something you were interested about, you can contact us about that. This specific community support series was actually created in the middle of the pandemic, earlier on in 2020. We created it as a resource to help people receive free information about mental health topics. We just felt like everyone was kind of going through it together. Not so many people, really everyone. And so we wanted to support everyone. And the sessions that we've been hosting through Zoom, they're typically once a month, and each session covers topics related to mental health and well-being. The mission is really to just increase mental health awareness and reduce stigma through education. And of course, all of these are free. Like every month, the sessions are free. So we really aim to provide all of you and all the participants who join, skills and information that they need to support themselves, friends, families, and, others in the mental wellness space. It's also a great resource for those who can't necessarily afford one-on-one or couples therapy right now. This is just something that we're really proud to offer. And this month's session is led by Kara. Kara is the clinical director for A Good Place Therapy. This is actually her second time hosting a community support series. She's also a full-time therapist with us, as well as a clinical supervisor. So she supervises other therapists. She specializes in working with adults, specifically working with adults who grew up in an alcoholic or otherwise dysfunctional family dynamic. And she actually recently published a workbook designed to help this population. It's called Adult Children of Alcoholic Parents, an Evidence-Based Workbook for Healing Your Past. It's actually available on Amazon, and the workbook itself is really great because it takes you through, you can fill it out on your own, and it's yours to keep. You just go through it and you fill it out. So it's really a great resource. And her last community support series was on that topic, which you can actually find on our website too, if that is something of interest to you. So through Kara's clinical work, especially during the pandemic, she discovered a lot of intersection between family dysfunction and difficulty with intimacy, which led to the curiosity about patterns of dating struggles that continued to show up in her work in the therapy room. And so that's how we got the idea. Okay, actually Kara had the idea, not me. I can't take credit, of doing this series on dating in uncertain times, kind of stemming from that. So we're really happy that you all can join us. And we are going to do questions at the end. So actually throughout the presentation, if you have any questions at all, put them in the chat. You can actually also, if you have a question that you want to ask anonymously and you don't want people in the Zoom room to see it, you can just chat it to me personally. You can, when you go to Zoom, you can there's a function where you can send it to a specific person. So I'm Daniela Walkman. You can just send it to me specifically, and we'll get to all your questions at the end of the presentation. And so without further ado, Kara.
Thank you, Daniela. And I just want to say you deserve a lot of credit because you do a lot for us. Your title is Director of Marketing and Practice Relations, I think officially, but that doesn't even begin to cover everything that Daniela does. So thank you for all your help behind the scenes. Thank you for calming my anxiety when I saw how many people signed up. And no, I'm half kidding. I'm really excited to be here. And thank you for the introduction. Like she said, I have been seeing a lot of dating anxiety coming up. I guess always, but more recently, more intensely, I'd say over the last 2 years. And I think it's just an important time to take a look at it as we're like re-entering back into a post-pandemic, as they're calling it, world, whatever that will look like. So yeah, I guess let's go ahead and get started, not waste any more time. So I'm just going to leave this up for a second to kind of give an overview of what I'll be touching on without giving too much away from the get-go. But yeah, I thought it was important to kind of define what I mean by dating, at least for this, the terms of this presentation to start. I'll definitely talk about the apps. I'm sure that is a hot topic, if not amongst you, the listener, but probably your friends at least. It comes up in almost every one of my therapy sessions with a single client. That being said, eventually dates do progress. So I want to talk a little bit about some concerns that might come up there, ways to deal with anxiety and other negative thoughts that might come up when you're wondering if it's going to get serious or not. Handling rejection, whether you have to be the one to deliver the bad news that you're not interested in somebody, or if you're on the receiving end of that news. I will touch on attachment style. I loaded a lot into that slide just as a heads up. I will try to get through it all without rushing, because I do think it's important. But attachment, just as like a side note, is really more talking about when you're in a relationship with somebody as opposed to when you're forming a relationship or when you're dating. It's definitely still important and it can inform a lot of things. But like if you wanted to do further reading on that, I will give some resources at the end about attachment in more specific ways. I always like to touch on myths because I think they kind of fall into that camp of core beliefs where we just assume certain things are true because they've been true for a long time, or maybe our parents told us that they were true. We learned it in society. And I love busting a good myth. So again, I have a lot on that slide that I'll try to get through as quick as I can. And of course, have to tie it all up with how can therapy help? What can you look for in a therapist who might want to help you with specific dating needs? So yeah, that's just a summary, and we'll get right into it. So defining modern dating. For the purposes of this talk, and I guess what I've seen, and people can feel free to disagree with me if there are different definitions, but I like to think of it as the whole process of getting to know somebody to see if you're compatible. Again, what I'm seeing in my office is that people really want long-term partnerships, especially after the last 2 years of isolation, confusion, a lot of uncertainty and changes. That's been kind of like the pattern that I'm seeing is people want, if not marriage, cohabitation or someone that they can see themselves with for a long time. Aside from that, it's dating, I think, is at times synonymous with discovery. You're discovering things about other people. You're discovering things about yourself. Maybe you're sitting across from someone and they're bringing up something in you that you've never felt before, good or bad, and that's information for you. So I think discovery, curiosity are really important principles of dating as well. And then for the purposes of what I'm talking about tonight, there, of course, is a romantic sexual component. Are you compatible there? Is there chemistry? And, is your sense of humor the same? Can you have banter with them? All that good stuff. And then a little bit deeper is the values and the goals. Are you aligning on what you really want in life, what you really believe about what a good life looks like? So there is that future element to dating as well. Another side note, my client population is mostly monogamous. So a lot of this presentation is geared towards that population. That doesn't mean that a lot of these principles can't apply to polygamy or to open relationships. It's just not really my focus as a clinician. So if it seems a little more slanted towards that kind of population, that's why. I just wanted to give a little heads up. Similarly, I won't be talking about, like BDSM communities like that tonight, but we do have therapists at our practice who specialize in those areas and are more competent, I would say, than I am. So if that's something you're interested in, head to meet the team on our website and you can click around and see some of those clinicians. So the apps, let's start here. I find the apps very socially interesting, more so now than ever, because we were locked inside for so long, especially in New York City, in our little, basically like small boxes all throughout the city, scrolling, swiping, and I think what's interesting about them is that they kind of give this illusion that there's abundance, right? That if you just keep swiping and going, you could go forever because new people are always joining, people are leaving, people are joining. And it's the more you go, the more people, the more opportunities that are there. This can be really nice because sorry, my dog wants to participate. He's very interested in the conversation. It's like, there's this constant sea of faces. There's, like I said, always possibility. There's always more out there. If you don't get a match, there could be the next person could be a match. It's a dopamine hit. All of these factors come into play. The downside is that when, and I'm sure a lot of you, if you're on the apps, you know this already, the algorithm really diminishes the pool of who is actually eligible that might be a good fit for you when it comes down to, are you attracted to them? Do you have the same values? Do you have the same interests? Are they even going to respond to you? That pool gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And it can get you can feel really helpless and really hopeless. But I do think, and I'll go back to the idea of abundance a lot throughout this presentation. It's an interesting theme. It can be healthy to think of it as there's always more possibility and always more opportunity. Similarly, thinking of this as a numbers game. The upside is everyone's just a profile. You don't have to take anything personally. You see someone, you keep going. And that can be kind of good for your ego in a way. If, someone doesn't match with you, or you're not seeing a match tonight, but maybe tomorrow you will. It's like, it doesn't really matter. Again, it's just a profile at this point. The downside of that is you're just a profile to everybody else too. So you don't really have the chance to know, is somebody really seeing me for me? What can they really learn about me from a picture? It's really hard. So a lot of my clients say it's hard for me to convey who I am over like a texting system. I'm much better, once you get me in person and I can get a feel for your energy. So those are some of the kind of like the pros and cons of viewing it as a numbers game. It can also start to feel like a chore or like a job. You set some time aside from each day to do this swiping, and it's like, well, yeah, then you have your rhythm, but does it become kind of like an obligation as opposed to something that could be really fun? Then there's also the idea of negative sentiment overload, which is pretty much a fancy term for hearing negative things and then only funneling your vision according to that. So it would be like if most of your friends had negative experiences on the apps and you all get together and talk about how terrible the apps are. Well, then the next time you log on, you're unconsciously going to be thinking, this is not going to turn out the way I wanted to. So that's something I kind of try to help people be mindful of is it really that bad of an experience, or are you soaking in all the negativity? We've all seen the TikToks and the Instagram reels of the horror stories of some of the things people say on these apps. So it's very easy to let that sink in and kind of like dictate your whole mood and attitude around the apps. Again, they are a tool. I say this about a lot of things. If we think of like a knife, for instance, a knife can be something that's used to cut your food, and then it helps you nourish yourself. A knife can also be used, it might accidentally cut you. It could be used as a weapon. So something like the apps, it's kind of like, if you think of it, am I using this to beat myself up and to feel worse? Is this just not making me feel good at all? Or am I seeing it again as like an opportunity to meet a lot of people? And again, don't make it personal until it becomes personal, which I realize is so much easier said than done when you're fed up with rejection. But again, going back to the fact that, you know, the goal is to get in front of somebody and meet somebody in person. So until that point, if you can kind of treat it like you're just trying to get that initial connection with someone, you might see a little bit more success, or at least a little less personal heartache from the whole process. So those are my thoughts on the apps. And now how about meeting somebody the old fashioned way? A lot of people say, I just want to meet somebody in person, like in a crowded bar, like the old days when you would just walk up and flirt with somebody. Unfortunately, not as many people maybe are doing that anymore. I think the scene is coming back probably a little bit, like here and there. But a lot of people are finding they have to get creative after COVID. You know, the idea of standing in like a sweaty, crowded bar, shoulder to shoulder, doesn't sound super appealing anymore. It also could be an age thing. Maybe you're outgrowing that scene and you want to try to meet people in other ways. So what I suggest is focusing on activities, you know, axe throwing, a board game bar. There's so many cool options in the city. I'm sure you guys know so many more than I do. But getting a little bit, like taking it to kind of a different level than just the traditional, kind of like centered on alcohol or even centered on eating. It can be nice to ease your anxiety to do an activity or try something new. Outdoors have gotten very popular, taking walks, or even just like I've heard some people having picnics in some of the parks. That can be really fun as well. But yeah, getting out of your comfort zone a little bit, doing something maybe you wouldn't normally do. The other thing I ask people to think about is, where would they go if they were going to have a good time? Where would my client go if he or she were to have a good night? Maybe it is a sports bar, watching, you know, your favorite sports team, and you really feel a sense of community there. That's amazing. It would be really cool if you met somebody, you know, and you were fans of the same team. Maybe you like to go to a certain exercise class, or you love running and you join a running group. The point is, start with yourself. Where are you going to feel the most fun, the most comfortable, the most at ease, the most energized, you know, whatever it is, and start there. You'll attract people that have similar values or similar interests. And for all of these, the other two bullets too, meetup.com is a great option. Also, like Reddit has a lot of subthreads for, I don't know if I'm saying that right, different subreddits, I guess, for activities in the city. That's a good option. Whatever you choose to do, if it's coming from a place that you're interested in, you're likely going to at least walk away with a new friend or two. And guess what? Your new friend might have single friends, or their friends might have single friends, or their roommates might have single friends. You never know. So it's always a great opportunity just to expand your network. Again, especially since we've all been kind of lonely and isolated the past couple of years. So keep that in mind as well. So let's say you've done these things, you've been swiping, you met someone out at a class or an event night or something, and you're nervous about the date. So you're going on the first date. I like to kind of go back to basics. You can always return to your five senses. Your body will never let you down. It's going to be there with you every minute, every hour of the date. So if you feel, you know, like you're overwhelmed or you're having trouble focusing because you're so excited or you're so nervous, try to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 trick. And if you've been in my the other talk that I gave, you might remember I reference this a lot. It's 5 things you can see, I think 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So you can or just 1 of each, if that feels like too much counting. Even now I was like that, I probably wouldn't be able to do that. If I was really anxious, I probably wouldn't be able to do that. So focus on 1 thing from each sense. And it could even be something about your date, right? Like I tell people to do this especially if they're nervous about like the social interaction part. Notice something about your date, like again, 5 things. Oh, he has brown hair. She has blue eyes. I really like his style. I really like her shoes, you know, whatever it is, ground yourself in what's going on right now. The other thing that I have been into recently is just reviewing like what it means to go with your gut. And I've noticed a lot of people, a lot of my clients ask me, well, how am I going to know if it's my gut or my anxiety? Sometimes I can't trust my anxiety. I want to run away, but maybe the person could be really good for me. Your gut will not lead you wrong, but it may not exactly tell you what's wrong. So I think that's an important distinction. You may feel something is off. You're not, something about the vibe is not right. Maybe a couple comments were a little off color, didn't rub you, in the right way. Whatever it is, you don't need to analyze the gut reaction in the moment. You can make a decision, get home, think about it, talk about it with your friends, and say, oh yeah, now I'm putting all the pieces together. That makes sense why I had that gut reaction. So you don't have to know exactly what it is in that moment. You can know enough to listen to it instead. And then, on the positive side, if it's going well and you want to get a little bit deeper, but you're not sure really what to ask, maybe you feel a little rusty, it's been a long time. I actually learned this from one of my clients and I thought it was so cool. They use this acronym called FORD, Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Dreams. It's a nice reminder of things that people typically love to talk about. And if they don't love to talk about it, maybe it will at least give you some insight into that part of their life. For instance, if they say, I don't have a really close relationship with my dad, but, I would love to talk about my mom. Great, that's information. And you can use that to see if your values will align. Same thing with occupation, recreation, and dreams. Maybe they're not thrilled about their job, and it's really important for you to have someone who's passionate about their career. That's information for you. So nice little acronym FORD for talking about values. And last but not least, sounds corny, but have fun. I mean, hey, you're not at work, right? You're on the date. That's a win right there. Hopefully you're eating some good food, good drinks. If you're in New York City or San Francisco, amazing food in both places. And hopefully your company is not terrible either. And at the very least, it's something different with a new person in a new place that you've never done before. So try to look at it, from like a beginner's mind standpoint. So when it doesn't work out, I started this by saying not to feel pressure to date someone that you truly in your heart of hearts feel like it's just not going to work out with. Maybe you can't put your finger on it. Maybe it's very obvious why it wouldn't work out. But it's really important not to have a scarcity mindset here. And what I mean by scarcity mindset is thinking that you're never going to meet somebody else if you call it quits with this person, staying with it for fear of being alone, for not meeting someone who's a perfect fit. Maybe you're not going to meet the perfect person, but you certainly don't have to stay in something that's not working for you. And in fact, you're actually sending the message to yourself. I believe there is somebody else out there for me, even if I can't see them, even if I haven't met them. So end it if it's not going anywhere. It's the compassionate thing to do for both of you. That said, don't beat yourself up if someone isn't interested in you. The cliche thing I could say is it's just not a good fit, but in reality, we know that it hurts. It's a blow to your ego. It kind of makes you distrust dating again. You feel like you're back to square one. But again, it's good if somebody is honest with you. I know it won't feel good, but it is information that you can work with and take into the next person that you eventually connect with. So to kind of piggyback off of that, I think that feedback is actually really important in dating, especially in the early, I'd say dates like 1 to 4. If it's not going to work out, especially, or if you want it to work out, but you're noticing some things that you're not comfortable with. I've encouraged a lot of people to do this, especially if there's disrespect of some kind or, inconsistent calling late at night after you've asked somebody to please not contact you anymore, those sorts of things. It's really good to be able to receive feedback and give feedback. And this is something, every case is different. And this is definitely something that a therapist can help you with for sure. Again, to piggyback off of that, ghosting. It is not a kind thing to do. Please do not do it unless the person has been, emotionally abusive or otherwise manipulative or harmful to you. If it is just I'm not feeling it, but I really don't feel like having that conversation, please take the time to send a 1 to 2 sentence text. It is really hurtful and confusing when people truly don't know if they did anything wrong. But it's less about having done something wrong usually, and more about why didn't I deserve, that decency, that courtesy of just, hey, I had a great time with you. I don't see it going anywhere. That's literally all it takes. If you have been a victim of ghosting, you will know it is certainly not fun. It's very uncertain. And again, therapists can help you how to navigate that. Sometimes friends are good advice givers, but they can be a little biased based on their own experiences. So I found that therapy can be really helpful in navigating ghosting. And last but not least, it is totally okay if you take some time, to lick your wounds and have some restorative nights with your friends or family to remind you who you are. But definitely get back out there, because the longer you avoid and say, this always happens to me, I'm never going to meet anybody, you're just reinforcing the narrative that dating is bad. And that won't get you to where you want to be. So definitely get back out there as soon as you're feeling a little more restored. So let's move on to the next few dates. So this is where, I put some more like therapy tips in here, because you're getting more information about somebody. You've spent more time with them. Maybe you've even met 1 or 2 of their friends, or you've heard more about their personal life. So this is when kind of the thoughts can start to spiral, as some people call it, or your anxious habits might come back after they'd been dormant for a while. So from a cognitive space, meaning like just the way you're thinking about things, try not to beat yourself up for having anxiety. A certain level of anxiety is normal and actually productive. There's a bell curve that they actually did this kind of research study with standardized tests that found a certain level of anxiety actually helped people focus, helped keep the adrenaline up to just the right level. Of course, when it reaches a certain point, it's no longer productive and it can cripple you. But a certain amount of anxiety is normal. It's hard to put yourself out there, especially after the last couple of years. So try not to project your feelings or past experiences. Another way I could often phrase this is don't punish somebody new for your old partner's behavior, right? Be careful that you're not rewriting a story that's not really happening again. That can kind of come towards like the 3rd and the 4th date I've found. And then the 2 to 1 positive ratio. Again, if you know me, you know that I say this often. If you can come up with 1 possible negative outcome in your head can also come up with 2 possible positive outcomes. So always try to be like weighing the 2 against the 1. And that will flood your brain with like more positive possibilities than negative. And of course, like notice any communication patterns on the date. On the date and in between the dates, right? With texting, a lot of my clients talk about text anxiety. Am I going to hear from them? Am I not going to hear from them? Should I reach out? Should I not reach out? Do I want to play? Is it a game I'm supposed to play? And with that, I would say notice like, I guess the frequency or how you feel when you're talking to them or texting them, but also notice your expectations. Are you wanting a little bit more? Are you wishing it wouldn't just be, planning the next date? Like, do you want to be like talking more consistently throughout the week about your day, or, venting about your boss or whatever it is? Notice your own expectations, because eventually if it keeps progressing, you're going to want to share those expectations to make sure you guys are on the same page. Behaviorally, if you are somebody who gets more anxious on dates, I would highly suggest you keep your routine as much as possible. Wake up at the same time, make sure you're, fueling yourself, eating, keep your exercise routine, try to get outside, everything you usually do. Don't, throw it all to the wind just because now everything is revolving around the dates. It's good to keep yourself grounded. Yeah, like I said, fuel yourself with food, monitor alcohol. Again, if you're the anxious type that, I think it's very easy to overserve yourself a little bit if you're anxious. So just remember that you're actually in more control if you have less alcohol in your system and you can think through things a little bit more readily, I think. So those are just two other tips to keep in mind. Love a good journaling exercise. If you get home and you have a weird feeling and you're not sure what it was and you want to kind of work it out in your head, write about it. Also, positive reinforcement is a great way to be sharing with your dates what is working for you. So, like if somebody went out of their way to pick your favorite cuisine at a restaurant, for instance, and it was really good, tell them, like really make a point to say, thank you so much for doing that. That was so thoughtful. I really appreciated it. Increasing other positive activities outside of dating, kind of touched on this already, but really just like making sure you're still seeing your friends, still seeing your family, if that's something you regularly do, that you have other fun things going on. This will kind of like reduce overall anxiety. And again, I think keep you kind of grounded. And last but not least, again, going back to like activity dates as opposed to, sitting in a dark room with one candle looking at each other while you're waiting for your dinner, right? It can be a little overwhelming. And I think those activity dates definitely reduce some of the tension. And actually some of the literature I put in the end lists that very often as a recommendation. Okay, so attachment styles. I won't go through like what it means to be anxious, what it means to be avoidant, what it means to be secure, partially because I think that's just helpful self-exploration, but also every therapist has a little bit of a differing opinion on what that is, I think. So I'm going to more speak to, let's say you already kind of know or have an inkling that you're anxious or avoidant or secure. These are the coping skills I would want you to focus on when you're dating. So anxious people, your main focus is acknowledging your needs and not feeling judgment about them. If you like to hear from somebody consistently every day, you like that good night text, the good morning text, that is totally fine. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. You're not clingy, you're not needy, you're not psycho. Remove those judgmental words from your language, please. What I would rather you do is acknowledge that, accept that. That's just a part of your communication style. And, seek your partners then accordingly. Seek that out in your dates. And hopefully you'll meet somebody who does those things and or is responsive to you asking them to do those things for you. Same thing with the abundance mindset. There's always more people to meet. You don't have to settle for somebody that maybe you're not attracted to or wouldn't normally see yourself with. There could be somebody else there, and it's okay if something doesn't work out. I guarantee you there's somebody else out there for you. Again, expressing your needs up front, that's kind of redundant. I sort of touched on that already. Be willing to walk away if someone's not meeting your needs. That's really what the needs are all about. Once you can say, this is important to me and it's pretty non-negotiable, you can start sifting through potential people right away. And lastly, give security a chance. And what I mean by that is sometimes I found that anxious folks, when they meet a securely attached person, which is the last one there at the bottom, it can feel boring. You can be like, where's the catch? But, oh, they're calling when they say they're going to call. Oh, wow, they're doing everything nice. Sounds great, ideally, right? But that kind of stability and consistency can then almost feel like, well, where's the fun? Or where's like the passion or the energy there? A secure person might make you feel like that, but that's okay. And there are other ways that you can grow passion, connection, and love than the drama of, oh, I don't hear from you for 2 months and then suddenly you're blowing up my phone. That's probably not a secure person. So that being said, avoidant, these strategies are mainly focused on not fleeing the situation when somebody's getting too close to you. So learning what is your gut, ooh, this person's really not a good match, versus a deactivation strategy, which is essentially that urge to, if it's fight or flight, it's flight, you want to leave. It's very tricky to distinguish. Therapy, again, not a shameless plug, but can be very helpful with that. Avoidant folks tend to be very self-reliant. Like, I would almost say too self-reliant. It's a great quality to be independent and to know that you can rely on yourself and provide for yourself. But at what point does that push other people away? And when people want to help you, you're kind of putting your guard up. So again, in therapy, you'll learn how to lean on others, how to build a support network, how to be more vulnerable. It's really wonderful when you can let people in like that, because then they want to let you in. A nice way to do this is more in the early phase of a more committed relationship, but you can make a gratitude list about your partner. What are all the things you really love about them that you think, your life would feel more empty without? It's a nice way to reframe that urge to kind of like break free and just be away from it all. And lastly, the one, I probably should have put this in the myths slide at the end. But the one is not a thing. This is something very important for avoidant tendency people to accept. It's actually kind of like a defense strategy. So if you are thinking there's this ideal, the one, everyone you meet is never going to add up to that. And you're subconsciously going to be kind of like hindering yourself from experiencing like true imperfect love. And that could be with anybody not anybody, but it's a little bit of luck, but it's a lot of choice. It's like you're choosing to make somebody the one. You're choosing to work on things with them. So it's an interesting concept, but I personally don't believe that there is a one. And then secure. So securely attached people tend to attract all kinds of people because they're secure. If they find themselves, attracted to an anxious person, they're going to need to maybe set some boundaries around, yes, I can communicate like that with you. No, I can't meet that need. They're not going to put up with mistreatment, like when it borders on disrespect, you need to nip that in the bud and make very clear that you respect yourself and you expect that from other people. Checking in and being sensitive. So acknowledging that maybe your life experiences as a secure person are not the same as an anxious person's. And so you might have to dial back some of your previous thoughts about what anxiety meant, whatever that might look like. And last but not least, just boosting your partner's self-esteem whenever you can. Positive reinforcement goes a long way. All right, we've reached myths, and I'm just going to do a quick time check. We got 15 minutes. So Danielle, I'm going to try to go through this quickly so we can get to questions, but I have a feeling people will appreciate this slide. So I need to love myself first. No, you don't. I mean, it would be lovely if you loved yourself, but sometimes the best way to feel that love is to see yourself through somebody else's eyes who doesn't see your flaws as you see them. And that can be super, super healing. It's a lot of what we at AGP work on in couples therapy as well. Shouldn't love be easy? I wrote down, it may not be easy. It should be, I think it should be fun. I think love, you should have fun with your partner, whether that could be any type of fun, right? Maybe your fun is staying in, maybe your fun is going out, maybe it's traveling, maybe, you haven't left your hometown, as long as you're having fun. Easy implies that there's no work, and that is simply not true. I think in any phase of dating, a relationship, getting married, having children, there's always going to be work. I have an anxious attachment style, so I'm doomed. That's a common one I see. Like, no one's going to love me because I'm so needy. Again, there's usually judgment there. So I would encourage you to drop the judgment and focus on your personality traits that have nothing to do with your anxious attachment style. Same thing comes with avoidant people. They feel they get a bad, they kind of got not a great deal being avoidant because again, it's sort of like, I think they get a bad rep because it's like, you can't change them. They're never going to change. And that's not true. Avoidant people go to therapy all the time because they love their partner and they really want to work on themselves to make it work. And they feel like they're chronically disappointing them. So that's not true. And again, if you go back to the suggestions on the previous slide, you can make little shifts to be more emotionally available while you're dating. Sometimes people think that they know the person is doing the same thing over and over again, the person they're dating, but they're convinced they'll change for them. Someone is never going to change for you. They will make the decision to change. It would be great if it was influenced by you, but there is no guarantee that's what would happen. So your best bet is to focus on yourself and asking yourself what you're getting out of that relationship. I'm going to pause here because I think your questions are more important. And if I can get to how therapy can help, I would love to touch on that, but I am going to just pause here and turn it over to Daniela now.
Thank you, Kara. We did get a few. I actually got 2 questions. Let me open up my chat to me anonymously.
Cool.
So let me open that up. What should I do if I'm anxious before a date and I don't want it to impact the date?
Okay, great question. So this is a thin line between overthinking and preparing yourself for like strategies that you can use in your head, right? So the first thing would be to make sure to identify when you're slipping into like the spiral of the overthinking. There's a few telltale signs of that. The one is you're like having the same thought over and over, but just in different forms. And you're like, wait, this is like deja vu. I just had this thought 10 seconds ago. Or you're asking yourself, what if a lot? You have no idea what's going to happen. But if it's kind of like regular thinking or preparing yourself, I see this commonly with maybe topics that the person that you might not be comfortable sharing about on like a first or second date. So maybe it's like a trauma, or something in your family that people usually ask about, or that comes up early on, and you want to like rehearse how to navigate that. That I think is totally fine. And you can do that with a friend. You can do that with a therapist. I would just really check in with yourself and assess the likelihood if the worst case scenario is truly that likely, if that makes sense. So you can say, well, yeah, that could happen. But what's more likely to happen? Yeah.
Okay.
That was about anxiety before a date, right? Yeah.
Sorry?
That was about anxiety before a date, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
We have another anonymous one, but we just got one in the chat. Sarah's asking, hi, my question is, I've been on 8 dates with a great guy, but I want him to text more. I can sense he's not a huge texter, but I'm anxious attachment and start to spiral if I haven't heard from him. Sounds like me.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
She's saying how to bring up, I'd like you to check in more and respond faster without seeming too needy. Great question, Sarah.
That is, Sarah, I'm so glad you asked that. That is so many of the people I work with. I've been there myself. I have to say, I don't even know that I was that self-aware to even know what I was feeling at that time. But I think, well, I love the way that you just phrased it now. And I'm wondering if it's more about the timing that you're not sure of when to bring it up. Like if you don't want to ruin a date or like dampen the mood. And I'm putting that in quotes because ideally this person would be really receptive and listen to you. So I wouldn't worry about like ruining the date or, you know, putting a damper on the night or anything. But I do think if you're seeing this 8 dates is eight times like hanging out with someone, that's a good chunk of time. And you want to invest in yourself and make sure, again, that this person can give you what they need. I also like that you said, you're just not sure. I think you said he's not maybe that kind of a texter. So it might be more of a sharing than an asking at first. So you might say, I noticed this about you and I noticed this about me. Like I really like when, you know, whatever you said, when people are more consistent on a regular basis with communicating with me. Do you ever feel like that? And maybe just like start it lightly. So it's not going in hot of like, hey, I need to know if you could do this for me or not. Cause I can understand how you might not want to start off with that. So I hope that's helpful to phrase it like that.
We have another question here. This is a good one too. Is it bad if I text somebody who ghosted me to share how I feel?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that comes up a lot. And this has been I'll admit this has been trial and error for me as a therapist with people. It's obviously a case by case basis. And also some of my personal experience with this as well. What I have come to the conclusion about this is it's okay. Whatever you decide to do is inherently fine. As long as it's respectful, you know, honest, saying your feelings, I'm here for it. What I encourage my clients to think about though first is, are you going to be okay? Or maybe not even okay. Are you willing to accept that you might not get a response again? Because we have to look at past behavior, right? If they've already ghosted you, they already think that's okay to do, or they, at one point in time, they thought that was okay to do. It might happen again. So if you don't want to put yourself in that position, don't. There is no need to. You can talk to your friends about how you feel. You can talk to your therapist about how you feel. But if it's really important for you to get it off your chest and say like, no, this is about me, and like sticking up for myself, and that I didn't appreciate this. And I don't care if they don't answer. Like, I know they'll get it. I know they'll read it. And that's all that matters to me. That's amazing. You should definitely send that text. So yeah, like don't assign judgment to it, but be prepared for the outcome. And it's okay to not want that outcome.
That's a good tip, Kara. Thank you. If anyone else has questions, you guys can feel free to put it in the chat or send it to me anonymously. But Kara, maybe you want to continue the therapy slide. That's all the questions we have so far.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. So I'm actually going to go back to myths then. Because I skimped on a few there at the end. Yeah, secure people won't have any issues like this. So this is actually quite the opposite is true. Secure people, how can I phrase this? They're going to get all types of people, right? Anxious, avoidant, other secure people, but that doesn't mean, you know, they're perfect. That doesn't mean they don't have bad days, or that maybe they struggle with a mental illness or a trauma outside of the relationship and it affects them in certain ways. They get stressed just like everyone else. So I wouldn't idolize secure people, you know. Sometimes it's very confusing to be a secure person in a relationship with an anxious attached or an avoidant attached. Like, let's say it's an avoidant attached. The secure person is going to start to think they're doing something wrong, and they're going to analyze their feelings and worry that, oh, am I not putting enough in the relationship? Is there something wrong with me? So they're not immune to, you know, the thought patterns or the behaviors. So just be careful with idolizing stuff like that, I guess I would say. Never feel ashamed and embarrassed to be lonely or to be alone, either or. Everybody feels lonely. People feel lonely in their relationships. People feel lonely in their families. Sometimes in their friendships or in the workplace. It is a natural human feeling. And it's also natural to want to connect. Like if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, how did we keep families going? How did we keep communities going? You form partnerships and you stay together, and you can rely on each other. That's the basis of attachment theory. So it's not shameful that you feel, some people say, I feel desperate. It's not that. You have a human need that's not being met, and you're trying really hard to get it met. And lastly, couples therapy is only for long-term couples with serious issues. I threw this in there because I know this is more about dating, but for anybody who's been with a partner and, boyfriend, girlfriend for however long, and maybe there's questions around marriage that make somebody skittish, or children, or the next steps. It is never too early to go. Well, I wouldn't say that. It wouldn't necessarily be that early to go into couples therapy to talk about what your future might look like together. So you don't need to wait until you have a big blowout, or until you're married, or pre-Cana, or anything like that. You can go as you are.
Kara, we got one
yeah.
question that I just wanted to get to before we hit the 8 o'clock mark.
Yes, I
just
can
in case. Do you think attachment styles change based on the relationship that you are in?
Ooh. I think they can, but I think more what happens is your attachment system is just not as activated. And what I mean by that is when someone's shown you consistent love, affection, reliability, trust, all those things, your attachment system has less reason to become active. You might also find that in your relationship is great, but it might be activated at work or with your group of friends. I see this interpersonally with young women a lot. Attachment styles, similar stuff happens with female friendships. It's very interesting. So it's kind of a cop-out answer. It can, but it's more likely that it's just like laying dormant. So, which is great. If it's not activated, the behaviors aren't affecting you in a negative way, which is wonderful.
Thank you, Kara. We can continue. I just wanted to get to that question before.
Yeah, totally. So therapy. Well, again, we talked a little bit about attachment style. That's one way therapy can be helpful, applying what I've been talking about specifically to you and people that you're attracted to, dating. It can answer the question, why am I attracting the same kinds of people over and over again? That's a question I get a lot. We can understand where it came from. It may or may not have something to do with your parents. It doesn't always. It could, again, have something to do with another childhood interpersonal issue that affected your attachment. But sometimes, like, looking backwards, at least getting an understanding can help you feel more compassionate towards yourself, and not like it just like the pieces just click and you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. Like, I should stop beating myself up. Now I can start healing. So that's one way. Another more tangible way is like learning actual tools, CBT, challenging your negative thoughts, following the train of where they come from, kind of like laughing with your therapist about how ridiculous they are. And DBT is another one for very strong emotions that's pretty effective. If you're going into dates, like having trouble like regulating your anxiety to the point where it's causing panic, or it's showing up in the date or you're canceling the date, whatever it is, there are a lot of good DBT skills that can help with that. And then just like basic communication and assertiveness skills, kind of like Sarah's question, asking for what you want in a way that's going to feel authentic to you. And then lastly, I mean, really what therapy is it's a trial chance to have a relationship with somebody. Obviously not a romantic relationship, but one that you're sharing, intimate details about yourself. And your therapist is a real person who has an attachment style, it like 100%. And stuff will come up where, you know, what was the example I came up with? Like maybe you withdraw from your sessions after a really emotional one. So, you know, you're really, you go into a lot of detail about something and then the next couple weeks you cancel and you're not sure why and your therapist isn't sure why, but then you talk about it and it's like, well, I was just so embarrassed that I cried and I never cry in front of people. So that's just one example of how you can repair that and learn about yourself. So whatever's going on in your world, it'll come up in the therapy room at some point. So yeah, that's all I have. Here's my info. If you would like to work with me, I have openings. So I would love to work with any of you.
Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Kara, for leading this session. If anyone has any last minute questions, you guys can put it in the chat. I do recommend, if you are on social media, particularly Instagram, of course, to follow A Good Place Therapy, but specifically follow Kara's account, Kara About Yourself. She posts she creates a lot of content to help with this type of stuff and just like more therapy related content. And it's so helpful. I appreciate her posts all the time. So be sure
Thank you. I try. It's a fun hobby.
Yeah, they're great. But like we said earlier, this has been recorded. And we will, once I like extract the video, I will email everyone later this week, latest, you know, maybe Monday morning, I'll email out this video to everyone and you guys can share it, rewatch it. It'll be on our website too. And I'll be sure to also give you guys Kara's information again in an email if you just want to reach out to her for some questions.
Thank you so much, Danielle, again for hosting and organizing, making this PowerPoint did not look like this when I did it. So this is all Daniela. It's beautiful. And thank you all so much in the chat. I'm just responding to everyone. Hi, Gina.
Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone in the chat for being vulnerable and asking those questions, because I know that well, it's just like, you know,
it's not easy. It's a public
questions.
forum and your name is attached to your Zoom and dating is tough. So I'm here and I look forward to connecting with anyone that wants to.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara. And thank you everyone. And feel free to reach out to Kara. Her email's on the screen. So have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night. Bye, guys.